Hey everyone, welcome to episode 12 of the Blackbird Chronicles. Lots of cool stuff to go through today. Uh, hey Glenn, hey Alexandra, glad that you could join me today. Back to, I guess this is what the normal time is on a Saturday at noon US Eastern Standard Time. A little early for the West Coast at 9 a.m. for the US. Probably better for European time frame around 7 or something like that. So I'll try and move these around a little, as I mentioned last time, to try and get a good time. It's probably 1 o'clock is a little better. I think that would accommodate the West Coast a little easier. So apologies if it's early on the West Coast. I appreciate you joining. And hey, Jesus, part of the Blackbird Army. I appreciate that. So thanks for joining, and Tristan, appreciate it. So let's jump in, and I've got a lot of interesting things I think to talk about today, and we'll do some question and answer through as you have questions. Shoot them up. Hey Tony, thanks for joining. All right, let's see. So I wanted to start with a couple of things that actually wasn't on my agenda for today. I usually set that up at the start of the week, and then a bunch of things happen. So I'm going to talk about this, which was that the GTX 5070 Super announcement, rumors came out a while back that it was going to come out before the end of the year. If you look at my last few live streams where I talked about this, I clearly stated that I didn't think that made any sense and that it would be CES 2026. I'm not basing that on anything other than the obvious a business, I think, situation for Nvidia, which is that it makes absolutely no sense to launch new cards when you're in a dominant position. So why would you launch the new cards early? Make sure you sell all of your existing cards and then launch new cards. CES also makes a lot of sense because they do lots of announcements at CES, and this would give Jensen something big to talk about on stage, right? Hopefully they don't make things up again like last year, but it would give him something to talk about. 5070, 5070 Ti, 5080 Supers, right? Which is what we expect. So this isn't surprising to anyone that watches the channel that suddenly the 5070 Super is not coming out anytime soon. What I found absolutely fascinating was that in the article that I'm posting here, which was from Video Cards, they go ahead and state this. Recently, there was a discussion about a potential early release of the 50 Super Series. Since no credible information has surfaced about such plans, we did not cover the story, but that did not stop many outlets from sharing it without verification. So, Video Cards is trying to portray themselves as the purveyor of solid information. You can trust us. We didn't share these rumors. We verify stuff before we share them. So when I read that, I thought, I vaguely recall seeing the rumors on Video Cards. So I did a quick YouTube search, and sure enough, on July 28th, Nvidia GeForce RTX 5070 rumored to appear before 2026. Hold on a minute, right? Hold on, what did they say? Since no credible information says we did not cover the story. This looks like them covering the story. That's odd. So they even wrote this, right? There were earlier rumors suggesting a 2026 launch at CES, but based on more recent sources, the 50 Super Series is actually on track for Q4 2025 or a holiday season release. So they had that in their article, and you can look these up, by the way. So I went on Twitter, which is where I typically will point things out to people, and said Video Cards is lying. They just released an article about this. And you know, and you can verify it for yourself, pull up their article. So, you know, it wouldn't have been so bad if they hadn't tried to paint everyone else as sharing these rumors, but not them. They're the trustworthy source. So what they then did is they then went back to the original article that I tagged in my Twitter post, or X, whatever you call it now. They went back to the original article from July and added, please note that this post is tagged as a rumor. Now, that's great, but don't you think that would have been better to do when you posted the article? And then why did you go and say that, this again? Hey, since no credible information, we did not cover the story. You did cover the story. You basically just lied to your audience. And I mean, this is the problem, right? So yes, I caught them in a lie, but this is the problem that I'm seeing across larger channels and tech outlets like this. They just make stuff up. And what's crazy is this was verifiable. Like, you could verify that they were lying. It was absolutely crazy. So anyway, so you may question, well, that's video cards. They're a big tech site. But, look at, what is it, UFD Tech or whatever. The guy is a nice guy, but he does a video saying that the Nvidia 50 series has been delayed. Delayed from what? It was a rumor. It's not delayed if your rumor turns out to be false. This should have been called rumor about 50 series launch false. And the person that leaked the rumor should be called out for leaking false information. And this is the problem. No one goes back and actually says, is what they announced true or false? Are they a solid source of information? You then get someone playing into it saying it's delayed. It's not delayed. It was never announced. It's not delayed. Like, I mean, it's obvious. But anyway, so this appeared on GN's news. Like, they all pushed this rumor. You look at some of the bigger content, creators and channels on YouTube, many of them push this rumor. So it's a bit rich now to come back and say, we told you so. I mean, it's anyway. So I guarantee on the next GN hardware news that they'll say it looks like they've pushed back to here. It's the wrong language. It was never announced, so it's not pushed. So, so Glenn asks, I wonder if both articles were the same writer. I don't know. Did I put the author? No, I didn't put the author on this one. I have to go back and take a look. I just did snippets from the website, but you can very easily check it out. They probably weren't from the same author, right? Now, that being said, okay, that's a little bit better. If they were from the same author, that's a huge problem. If they weren't from the same author, then you could argue, well, the person didn't know what was on their side. But he did make a claim, or she made a claim, that they had not spread the rumor when they had. So, not good, not good. Yes, Tony J, true journalism is dead. I don't consider a lot of these tech channels and things journalists. I don't consider myself a journalist. I may be tech media, but I don't even like that term. I like it when it gets me into CES and gets me access places. Now, I am happy to be called media then, right? CES registration for 2026 just opened up last week. So if you are planning to go, make sure you register. But it's crazy. I don't know. This really bothers me because it shows the willingness to just spread misinformation, and you shouldn't be spreading rumors. I mean, there's lots of sites that do a really bad job of that. And then I think I've mentioned this last time. Then it's like the person that gambles at the casino and wins like $1,000 and doesn't tell you about the $50,000 they lost before winning the $1,000. They just tell you about the $1,000. Kind of same with spreading rumors. They only tell you about or remind you about the one they got right. So just be careful out there, right? Let's see. John, thanks for joining us. He's a member of the Blackbird Army. I'll talk about that a little later, so thank you for joining us. Ian said, I hate it when I have to force stop YouTube to be able to comment. I didn't know that was an issue. That would be good to understand. I can always send, if there's an issue, I can send it to YouTube, and so can you. YouTube, it's like when you send in something, it goes into the ether of YouTube, and you're not really sure if you're going to get a response or not. So I remember sending them a note about one of my videos that should have been performing really well, had great click-through rate, great watch time, and it just tanked. And then I sent them a note, and I went backwards and forwards, and I explained that, hey, I'm a former chief data and analytics officer. I know a lot about data. I was a VP of AI. Like, I know how the algorithms work. Don't just throw at me it's the algorithm, because that's BS. So I went through and showed them the data, and then they finally just said, we're not going to discuss this any further. and a week later the video picked up in views. It's crazy. So there's weird stuff going on, and there's weird stuff at the moment with YouTube. Every channel's views are down, and originally it was about they're cracking down on view bots, but I don't think that's the case. And Linus has been covering this, and lots of channels have been covering it. So I'm seeing that too, but engagement is up and likes are up, so it's strange. I don't know. I don't really care as long as the people, like, you know, this audience, as long as you watch the content, are engaged, and that's what I care about. I don't care. I'm not big enough to really see like my views from like Linus, you know, oh, we used to get 2 million views and now we have 1 million views. Man, I'd love to have a video that had 1 million views. So I'm still small enough that I guess it's not as obvious, right? The drop. Let's see. Oh man, Angelou, tell that to GamerMeld. I've watched that guy's channel, GamerMeld. If you haven't watched it, feel free to check it out. He has a strange voice. Like, his voice is very radio-like, but it seems like it's synthesized. That's what's weird. Like, there's some kind of AI synthesizing of his voice or something. It could just be microphone or settings, but it's very strange to listen to. He does a very professional-ish looking channel though, so but he does spread rumors like crazy. Absolutely. I mean, I wouldn't watch channels that just spread rumors. It's crazy. Occasionally they'll get them right, but the chances of them not being right are pretty high. Let's see. Brian said the super version is like a mixed bag. You wait for it, but RTX 60 series may come out, and yeah. Well, so the question is always, should I buy or wait? And my philosophy on buying versus waiting is, you look at the 50 series launch. If you were planning to buy, say, a 4090 in November or December, it actually would have been smart if you'd purchased. So number one, when the 50 series launched, that's just the announcement. You couldn't get your hands on 50 series cards for quite a while, particularly at the higher end. So you were really waiting to, say, March or April to get your hands on a reasonably priced 50 series card. And during that time, 40 series cards, particularly the higher end, spiked in value. Now, I remember this because I was able to sell a couple of my 4090s, and I way overpaid for a 5090 because I really wanted to test it. And then the video tanked, which, anyway, whatever. That's a whole nother thing. But nonetheless, waiting can be problematic. And so I always look at it and say, if you're unhappy with your experience with your PC, professional workloads, gaming, then now is a good time to buy. Now, if the announcement is tomorrow, I'd wait and see. But given how far out we are from CES 2026, which is start of January, I think it's still a good time to buy. And then the other thing to think about is that when the announcement is made in January, there's going to be a whole slew of people trying to sell 50 series cards for cheap on eBay and other places. So that's a good opportunity to pick those up too. I always look for, just buy it when you need it. Don't try and time it, because there'll always be something better around the corner. Like, always, without fail. And the day you buy is the day that something better comes out. It's bound to happen. If you're a PC tech enthusiast for long enough, that'll happen to you and you'll feel like crap. And it's happened to me multiple times. Right? Zelda said GamerMail just reports Moore's Law is dead. Yeah, Moore's Law is dead is one of the people that peddles in rumors. I mean, that's his whole channel. And he gets some of it right. And that's the problem, is he gets some of it right and he gets a bunch of it wrong. And there's never no one goes back and audits his channel and says, of the last 30 rumors that he helped to spread, 15 of them are right. I don't even know what his hit rate is. It would be interesting to see. I have no desire to do it because I think it'd be boring as hell, but it would be interesting to see those numbers. Let's see. Yeah, Tony made a comment that TechTube is spreading lies. It's gotten out of hand. Yeah, misinformation and lies. It really has. And I'm really trying to be a voice for reason, and there are others, that I'm sure many of you follow some of the others that are trying to come out there with the voice of reason and push back against it. But it seems like it's a lot of smaller channels trying to push back against the overwhelming larger channels. So it's going to take some time. But actually, I've had some success, and I can walk you through that over the last week. Jay responded to one of my tweets. He didn't directly respond to me, but he made a video about it where he was spreading lies that Microsoft was killing SSDs. It turns out not to be Microsoft. Then he releases a video trying to double down that it was Microsoft. I'm going to show you an example of Hub responding to one of my videos, and then obviously the fact that they put this. Please note that the post is tagged as rumor. I consider that to be a success. At least they did something, and I give them credit for at least doing that. I mean, that's a minimum level. Most just ignore it. Right? Okay, let me jump on to a new topic. Let's see. Yeah, I'll catch up on some questions in a moment, but let me jump onto a new topic because I think this is interesting. So it came out last week that the B770 is nearing launch. Now, last year at CES, Intel was very adamant that they do not have plans to release the B770. However, given the success of the B580, that's their plans changed, and that's why it took so long. And I don't know when this is going to come out. It says soon, and this is based on, I would say, this is a solid rumor in the sense that they showed evidence of the packaging, right? And the packaging for B770. So if the B770 does come out, there's no absolute guarantee, but I feel like this one is pretty solid. One thing to remember is that during my B580 review, I did a prediction of the performance of the B770. Now, the reason I did this is that people were claiming that the B770 could compete versus a 4080 at the time. And I wanted to see if that's even remotely true, because the one thing I will tell you about Intel cards is they've fixed their software, their drivers are great, they have great features. The XeSS upscaling works really well. So that's all good, but the performance is lackluster, and it makes sense. They're coming in with discrete GPUs, and they're a long way behind both AMD and Nvidia. So they're at the lower end. Claiming that the B770 will compete versus a 5080 or a 4080 is not good, right? So what I did is I benchmarked the ARC A580, I benchmarked the A770, and I benchmarked the B580. So Alchemist is A, B is Battlemage. That's the different series. Because I had 3 solid data points, I could predict the performance of the B770. Now, I did this for the 9800X3D before it was released, and I nailed it within margin, within 3% or so of the actual data. So I'm pretty confident that this will work, unless there's some kind of weird architectural change that doesn't follow the upscale, that doesn't follow the increase in performance from the B580 from the A580 to the A770. There could be this weird architectural change. I don't think that's the case, because that would require a redesign of the GPU or the wafers, which they haven't had time to do. So I'm reasonably confident in this, and you can check me. Obviously, this is on my live stream, so when it does come out, I'm going to test it, and I'm going to see how close I was to the actual prediction. But just to take a quick look, this is the average FPS for a B770 relative to 2 cards. So I tested it against a 4060 Ti and a 4070 Super. And you can see that it's a little better than a 4060 Ti. So I would say, and this is the 16 gigabyte model, I would say that it's equivalent. When it releases, I expect the performance to be equivalent to a 5060 Ti 16 gigabyte card. And I expect Intel to be very competitively priced. So they're going to be priced better than a 5060 Ti 16 gigabyte card. They are a long way off a 4070 Super, around 30%. So yeah, they're going to be long way off a 5070 basically. So if you're a 30% off, I mean, that's a generation. So unfortunately, I don't think this is going to be as good as some people think it will be. And this is the 1% lower, it's roughly the same, right? 30% lower than the 4070 Super and about 10% higher than a 4060 Ti. So, you know, take a look at the video if you're interested. You can see the approach, I talk through it. But this is basically the data that I show. I think the B770, I can't wait for it to hit the market. I'm going to test it. I hope it performs better than this. I'm not confident that it will. You can't just add VRAM and expect better performance. By the way, that's a huge problem that is a narrative that a certain channel is pushing out there. The GPU performance will dictate your performance in a game. Now, if you are VRAM limited, I think the B770 is likely to have quite a lot of VRAM, so I don't think it'll be VRAM limited. But if you are, then it might help in a game like Indiana Jones that's not well optimized. Something like that, it might help you a little, but in general, it's not going to do much. So I think the B770 could be a phenomenal professional card for potentially training algorithms. So with a lot of VRAM, that might be good. So keep that in mind. But I'm looking forward to this. Don't be disappointed that it's not higher. I mean, you should be disappointed, but Intel needs time. Hopefully with Celestial, they'll be able to bring their 770 like card up to the level of a Nvidia 70 series card, maybe 70 Super card. That would be huge for Intel. But it's going to take generation to generation to move up that tier list. So, you know, you have to be patient. We need Intel as a GPU competitor. I think everyone has seen that. It's not good for us that Nvidia is so dominant. And so we need them as a competitor, and hopefully they stick with it with discrete GPUs. Okay, let's see. All right, so before we jump into that, I'll catch up on a couple of questions here. Tristan, yeah, where's the Titan? Man, I remember buying a Titan. I think we talked about this on Skool. Buying my first Titan card, it was the first time I'd spent $1,000 on a GPU. I felt so incredibly guilty. Now, until I got the card, and then I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. And couldn't wait to try it out. But yeah, times have changed. $1,000 now gets you maybe a 5080 if you're lucky. So yeah, it's crazy. Let's see. Yeah, there's some discussion here about viewers catching on to the clickbait. I do think I do think that's true. I do think that viewers are starting to really catch on to, you know, some of the drama and clickbait that is posted. And one thing I do in my videos that you'll hopefully notice is I have a title and I have a thumbnail, and then what I do right at the start of the video is I explain exactly what's going to be in the video, and it ties to the title and the thumbnail. And that isn't the smartest thing to do because you're not hooking people to stay longer and things, but I think it's the right thing to do. And so I could probably farm more clicks if I didn't do that. But I've never, at least, you know, fingers crossed to this point, had someone come on my channel and say, it was clickbait, and what you said this was about is not what it's about. I've never had anyone do that. So I'm kind of proud of that. So I do that purposely because I don't like watching videos. You click on it and then it's like, oh, I'm going to do a performance prediction about X, and it's nothing to do with that, right? So yeah, I would be cautious of following channels that do that. And I'm not calling any specific out, but you know when you see them, right? Let's see. Tony said between you, Danny, and Jufus, that's where I get my news. Yeah, Danny did a podcast with Jufus, I think last week, something like that. And so that was good. I don't know Danny at all, never met the guy. So if he makes it out, he's based up in Canada. So that makes things a little tougher. But if you're interested, by the way, in attending CES, it's in Vegas in the first week of January, so that makes it tough for most people, or maybe the second week, first full week of January. So it's like January 5th or 6th. You can attend. It's crazy, like 150,000 people. It's a crazy event. But if you do end up going, shoot me a note because it'd be good to catch up, of course. So that should be fun. Let's see. Yeah, that was nice. DeZeus, appreciate that, helping people out. Let's see. Yeah, Stephen, I tend to agree. So Stephen said the RTX 5060 is a good $300 graphics card. Some reviewers seem to think that it should perform as a $1,000 GPU. I think that's fundamentally true. You've got to put things in context. Now, the argument is that $300 10 years ago got you something different than $300 today. I don't disagree. But in the context of the current environment, the 5060 is a good card for what it is. Now, hopefully, the B770 will come out and really put competition on at that lower end. And so I'm really looking forward to seeing what it can do. But if it can do better than a 5060 Ti 16GB card, fantastic. And it's $50 or $100 cheaper, that would be really good. I mean, that would be a win for Intel, in my opinion. Because their drivers are good. When they first came out, when I tested the A770, their drivers were not good. And I think you saw a lot of news about that. So, let's see. So, Safir said, there used to be an awesome magazine when I lived in Australia, Atomic MPC. They still around by chance? I think a lot of the magazines went under. I used to love buying those PC magazines, and you'd have the CD with 10,000 things on them. And I used to love reading through those magazines. The only magazine, I have a digital subscription to PC Gamer. That's the only one that I know that's decent, that's still around. But I have it the digital. I wish I could get it hard copy. But their sister publication, Maximum PC, stopped their that publication a while back. So, yeah, unfortunately, not too many of them around anymore. But I remember those days. I remember those times. That was a fun time. All right, let me quickly talk about the community that we're building in Skool. This is the home of the Blackbird Army, where we've got. We're building slowly, which is great. So we've got community chat feature, posts, engagement. We have a leaderboard for how much you engage. This is going to be the home of my It's Not Rocket Science education program. News. So I do daily news updates, try and pick key things out. Tuning and optimization. We do troubleshooting, question and answer, that type of thing. I just did the first live Q&A session. I did it via Zoom. However, Skool 2 days ago added which was fascinating. 2 days ago, they added a Zoom capability within Skool. So now you don't have to go outside the platform. So on Tuesday of next week will be another Q&A session. And then what I will be starting is, as I develop the education program, I plan to, every topic I come up with. So the education program will walk you from buying, everything you need to know. What's your objective? How much budget do you have? Considerations to have, buy versus build, all the way up to, so that's planning, building, and optimizing. So I call it PBO, like AMD's PBO, plan, build, optimize. So within the build phase is all of the components, right? How to lay out your fans, how to select a PSU, where to put the radiator, step by step how to build. And then the optimize is about, and troubleshooting. The build phase also includes software, how to set up Windows properly, what programs to run, how to benchmark, how to measure temperatures, all those things. And then in the optimization, it's about upgrades, how to tune and optimize your system. And I have some of this content is on my primary channel, and I'll continue to do that as I build out this program, and some of that will be brought into the program. But I intend to do live education sessions. I'm going to try and do these weekly, where I pick a topic from the course, and it'll help motivate me to make it. and then I'm going to share it with the community, the Blackbird army within Skool, so that I can get feedback on, hey, you missed this, or this was really good, or whatever, so that I can really create a phenomenal course. So that'll be good. I also have a giveaway, the Alienware AW3225 QF 32-inch. It's sitting over there. 4K monitor. So I'm going to be giving that away. And there's also a limited time discount if you join. So I wanted to give that plug. The reason that I'm doing this is that I want to avoid as much as possible sponsorship on the channel. I will partner with different companies that I consider to be highly ethical and credible. You know, as I work these, I'm going to work these kind of relationships at CES. But like DeBauer, for example, love to have a partnership with him because I love his stuff. Anyway, but the problem with sponsorships is that they'll give you a component, and even if they don't say, hey, you should do X, as a reviewer, you feel compelled to be a little bit more lenient on the product, and you just can't help it, right? It's just human nature. Someone gave me $1,000 GPU, so yes, I'm gonna be honest and tell you when I find issues, but you are automatically, I think, biased in their favor because they gave you something. And so most companies don't come out and say, you must do X, Y, Z. Most don't do that. So, but I want to avoid that as much as possible. So I'm open to taking, you know, if someone gives me a motherboard or a GPU or something, I'm open to it. Don't get me wrong, particularly when I can't access it. So there's motherboards and things that just come out and I have to wait 6 months to get one because they're not available. That's an advantage. But I've made it very clear with people, companies I've been talking to, that I will be very focused on unbiased. And I will send them something if I find something, but I'm going to be, you know, focused on being unbiased. I think the best way to do that is to self-fund. So that's why this is important. And I appreciate everyone that's joined so far that's part of the Blackbird Army. And I'm going to continue to have memberships on the channel. What I'm going to be doing as we do these live streams over time is that the question area is going to be for members of the channel. Simply because I get a lot of questions, but you can still ask your questions on the channel, that type of thing. So I haven't made that change yet, but I'm going to continue to support memberships on the channel as well as we move forward. So just that's why I'm doing this, and that's why I'm plugging it as well, because it really does help. Okay, next topic. Let's see. I like that, Daisy. You're never too cool to school. Yeah, it's an interesting name. Who's the entrepreneur that is a key part of Skool? I forget his name. I'll remember it later. But he's a key founder of the program too. And I did consider Skool versus let's see. You know, some people were telling me Discord. I looked at everything. The great thing about Skool is it has a nice area to host like courses and things like that, and had it was really well set up and nicely laid out. And now it has the, you know, video conferencing feature, which I know some of the other things had too. So that's why I settled on this. Let's see, next topic. All right, so this is one that I had posted here. So before I show you any data, I want to go through this, but before I show you anything, I want to give you a heads up of where I'm at. I've been planning to do a follow-up to my AMD AM5 memory video for quite some time. And I want to do a much more comprehensive review of memory. And what I've found, I've been testing for 2 weeks and I'm not done yet. I'm nearly done, but I'm not done yet. So the video is not going to be up for another 2 weeks because I have to finish testing, and I have to finish testing early this week, which I think I'm about there. I'm testing a lot of things, and it's a lot of benchmarks to run, and I need to go back and check a whole bunch of things. So I'm going to show you just a snapshot of a couple of, for one game, some of the testing that I'm doing so you know what to expect. But the thing I would say to you is this data might change a little because I always go back through my data, and if something looks weird, like if there's an outlier, and I benchmark each game like, you know, 4 or 5 times, then I take the top kind of, you know, I take the 3 results, but I average them out. I mean, so just bear that in mind. This data may change a little. So it's raw data that I'm going to share with you. So I always am cautious about this, just in case someone says, whoa, I saw your live stream and you said this and then this happened. So sometimes that happens, right? But I don't think this is going to change dramatically, but some things could change because I noticed some behavior. But just a quick recap. AMD AM5 CPUs operate very differently than Intel CPUs, the memory controller in particular, and they operate very differently than AM4. Not very differently, but differently, right? So on AM4, the memory clock, the unified memory controller, and the Infinity Fabric clock are essentially operating one-to-one. They are disconnected for AM5. And this is something that people have struggled to understand. I see it in the questions a lot when I do the videos. So on an AMD AM5 CPU, in this case, you've got, let's just say 2 CCDs. So it's a Ryzen 9. If it was a 9800 XTD, a Ryzen 7, you would just have 1 CCD. And then, so what happens is, this is the CPU core, you could call it. This is where the cores are. That communicates with the memory controller through the Infinity Fabric. So that has a clock speed of FCLK. So if you ever wonder what FCLK means, that's what it means. It's the Infinity Fabric speed. So for example, if your CPU is operating at a super high speed, it will be limited to communicating with the memory controller based on what your FCLK is. So that's typically why increasing FCLK enhances your performance, but we'll see if that's true. Then your unified memory controller is essentially what communicates between the memory or the physical interface and the Infinity Fabric. So the memory operates at MCLK, that's your memory clock, right? So DDR5 6000 is operating at, because it's double data rate, 3000 megatransfers per second, all right? So that's your, I'm sorry, 6000 megatransfers per second is operating a memory clock of 3000 megahertz. The UCLK in one-to-one mode is operating at 3002. So your FCLK kind of a base number is around 2000. So you notice that those clocks aren't synchronized at all. If you're operating DDR5 8000 memory, you'll be in 2-to-1 mode, which means that for 8000 memory, your M clock, your memory clock will be 4000 megahertz. Your UCLK will be 2000 megahertz because it's in 2-to-1 mode. And that means if you run an FCLK of 2000 megahertz, that will be synchronized, right? Now, is there an advantage to doing that? I'm going to explore that in the video. So just keep that in mind. And you can watch the original video if you want to get a refresher on this, but I'm going to do this in the new video, so don't worry too much. Just keep that in mind now as I show you my first round of results for DDR5 6000. So let me give you the context. This is Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024, a title that typically is pretty heavy on the CPU, which is what you want when you're testing memory. You want to load up the CPU. I'm running a 9950 X3D. So in my previous memory video, I ran a 9700X, a non-X3D, non-3D Vcache chip. It should be more sensitive to memory bandwidth than an X3D 3D Vcache chip because you have the 3D Vcache. I chose to run a 9950 X3D because it will essentially be performed like a 9800 X3D, but it offers much higher memory bandwidth. That's why I chose it. So look at these results and say, this is how it will perform for a 9800 X3D or a 9950 X3D. That's essentially what you're seeing here. The motherboard is the Apex, the 2DIMM high performance AMD AM5 motherboard. I told you this before and I'll tell you this again. It is completely pointless to buy an Apex over a Hero. I didn't see any performance difference. The Apex is a beautiful board, has its own memory fan, but there is no advantage in doing that. Let's see, and I ran it with a 5090. Kind of not relevant because the 5090 is not, it's just putting all the load onto the CPU because I'm running at 1080p low graphics settings here. So starting at the bottom, the baseline is DDR5 6000 CL30, 32 gigabyte kit. So that's single rank with an FCLK of 2000. When you put DDR5 6000 CL30 into your system, this is what you should expect. That's just basically everything on auto. Then if you take that and you put in fast latency, right? Lower latency30 memory. So this is now DDR5 6000 CL26. By the way, this was the exact same kit. All I did is modify the CL from 30 to 26 and got it stable, right? Everything else the same. 32 gigabytes, FCLK of 2000. Guess what I picked up? An entire 0.8% of performance from 225 to 226.9 and an entire 0.1% in 1% lows. So if you're just based on this game, and again, preliminary data, just based on this, if you were presented with DDR5 6000 CL26 kit or a CL30 kit, 32 gigabytes of RAM, and one is more expensive than the other, go for the cheaper kit. That's what that just says. Now, if you then go to a 64 gigabyte kit, so that is now you're at dual rank, this should perform better. Same thing, DDR5 6000 CL30, so equivalent to the baseline. All I'm doing is doubling the RAM and keeping the FCLK the same. I pick up a little bit more performance on 1% lows. It's now plus 1%, but basically no change on the average, right? I know this is shocking to me, a little bit disappointing. Now, if you keep the baseline, but increase the FCLK by 100 megahertz, what happens? And again, if you go back to this, what I'm saying is this increased in speed. You can do that in BIOS very easily. I'll show you how to do that in the video. You pick up a little bit more performance. There is value in doing this. So you pick up, now you've got an increase in 2.6%, an increase in 1% lows of 0.9. So now don't forget, you can run lower latency RAM with higher FCLK and get a bigger boost. But what this basically tells you is that if you're running a X3D chip, there's very low value in paying more for these faster memories because of the limitations of the memory subsystem that exists for AM5. That's what this basically says. Now, I'm also testing 8000. I've already completed that data. And I'm also testing 6400. I haven't quite completed that. The reason I haven't quite completed 6400 is that it was not stable using Expo 1 settings. I had to increase the voltage to get it stable. So that is a normal thing to do, right? So I wanted to give you a bit of a heads up that this is coming. Please bear with me. This is a lot of data. So I'm only testing 10 games, by the way. And so each one of these, right, is 10 games. And then, so that's for each one of these. And then there's 3 different memory kits. 3 different speeds that I'm testing at, multiple memory kits. So it's a lot of testing to keep track of, and then I got to go through and check it. So I'm going to try and complete this Monday at the latest so that I can build the script out and see if there's any other testing and get the data together. Because that's the thing. I mean, I can compare 6000 to 6400 to 8000 at just the baseline. I can compare them all with an increase in FCLK. I can compare them all with for a dual rank RAM. Or I can compare within each vertical, which is DDR5 6000, DDR5 6400. I haven't figured out what's going to be best, and I'll probably do a combination of things, but it's going to be a lot of data to look at. And then I've obviously got to draw conclusions from it. I just wanted to share this with you. This doesn't mean that all games will behave this way, because it hasn't so far. So there's been games where there's been bigger changes and games where there's been smaller changes. I've also had some weird things where I've had some decreases in performance. So I need to go back and check that and see if I made an error or whatever that may be. But I wanted to share this with you. I think this is pretty interesting. I also need to do a memory video for Intel Core Ultra systems because I think that's going to behave in an interesting way too. So let's see. So one thing I did want to point out is that Gigabyte came out and launched these new X3D motherboards. And this was the post from Tech Power Up. Gigabyte AMD X870E Aorus X3D motherboards achieve industry-leading DDR5 9000 performance with V-color memory. I'm like, wow, that's impressive, because even on my Apex, I can't get 8400 stable. I can get 8200 stable, Well, at least I wasn't able to with the prior BIOS. I haven't tried 8400 with the current BIOS, so I'm going to check. But 9000, I was like, this doesn't make any sense at all. And these X3D motherboard features in the past have been a load of garbage. So I can't wait to test it. But one thing, so this is again where this is very misleading. If you look at this graphic here, if you blow that up and you zoom in, you'll find out, and it's hard to read, but they ran this on an AMD Ryzen 7 8700G. The reason that matters is that that CPU is a monolithic design. The memory controller does not function this way. It functions way more like an Intel processor. And so I probably should get one of those CPUs to test to show that. But so it's not a huge feat to get an 8700G to run at DDR5 9000. And what's crazy is nowhere in this article do they say that it was run on a monolithic AMD chip that very few people use. You would think this was done on a 9800 X3D. So this is garbage, very, very misleading, typical, gigabyte marketing. I'm very disappointed about that. That's really not good. So it's not challenging to get an 8700G to run at 9000. I could do that on my Apex on a Hero tomorrow. So do better, right? Like this is not good. I didn't say anything about this because you just kind of get sick of going on Twitter and posting, hey, you guys screwed this up. Sometimes you just get sick of it. So, and I do too. All right, so before we transition into the next thing, let me take a look at some of these questions. Yeah, it would be, as Lester mentioned, it would be awesome if it was 9000 on a AMD CPU that people use in general. And I'm not trying to say there's anything bad about using an 8700G. It's a phenomenal chip, but it has an integrated, it's all integrated graphics. It's kind of the chip you buy if you're not going to get a discrete GPU. Phenomenal chip, but not what most people have. So it is incredibly misleading, right? Yeah, I had to use, by the way, I had to use a V-Color. This is the first time I've used V-Color memory. I had to use V-Color memory for my 8064 gig kit testing. It was the only kit that I could get that was 2 times 32 gigabytes. And I bought this off Newegg to test in the video. This is the only one I could get. So this is the first time I've used V-Color. Worked really well. No complaints at all. So, it's all the same chips underneath. So it's just how they make them look and their cooling, right? That's kind of what it is. Let's see. Yep, Tony agreed. Very misleading. Let's see. Tony J, I got my Trident to run at 9000, so I've been stable. I assume you're using an Intel system, which I know you are. So, but that's awesome. So that's your 8800 kit that you got to run at 9000. So very cool, man. You got to show me some screenshots in Skool for that. I'm really happy that you didn't have to switch out your motherboard. This was a conversation that we had in Skool where Tony was wondering whether he's got a 285K and he had lower speed RAM. I recommended a couple of approaches, and now he's running it at 9000, which is very impressive. So I'm proud of you, man. That's awesome. Let's see, and that's a Trident Z kit, if I recall. G-Skill makes some good memory. Let's see, Sapphire, is 2133, 4266, 8530 even possible? Man, running memory at 8533, I've had no luck running at 8400 or above. So one thing I did do, and this is why I have this motherboard sitting here. This is my old X670E Aorus Master that I was able to get 8400 stable on. So I want to hook that back up and just see if this motherboard is some kind of godlike motherboard. So, but 8533, I can almost guarantee you won't get that stable on AM5, on any motherboard, on Apex, anything. Right? Apex is supposed to be the best, doesn't matter. Let's see. Steven said, I did get CL36000 overclocked to 6400 on an Intel system. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, Intel has better memory controller than AMD. If you ignore the monolithic AMD designs, Intel has a better memory controller. There's no question. It's one of the big advantages of using Intel. I mean, if they had a 3D V-cache-like capability combined with their memory controller, that would produce a pretty interesting chip. I don't know how easy or difficult that it would be to do, right? Let's see, Buffalo Head, I'm going to pick up a 5090 9800 X3D from Micro Center this afternoon. Dude, you are having a great day. That is a day to celebrate. Is CL28 6000 RAM the way to go? Well, I mean, I just showed that. Not good at Lego, so a basic GPU, undervolt, and OC is all I have in mind. Yeah, so I would look at the latest video I have on my channel is a very comprehensive undervolting and overclocking guide for Nvidia GPUs. Definitely follow that. I mean, use the performance baseline, the balanced profile that I showed. But you don't, if you overclock and undervolt both your CPU and GPU the way I show you on the channel, you do not have to worry. Like, it is a very safe approach and it's so easy to do. So bear that in mind. For your RAM, get whatever you like. I wouldn't go and get CL40, DDR5 6000 CL40, but yeah, I mean, based on my testing, from what I've seen, if you've got an X3D chip, there's not a lot of value in getting a much higher speed, dual rank, lower latency kit, right? So if the kits are very closely priced, then do it, right? But I would either get 6000 or 8000. I would tend to avoid 6400 now too, because of the lack of stability I've seen lately when I've tried to run it at XMP setting or at Expo settings. It's just, you have to add voltage, at least what I've found, unless you get like a really nice combination of things. So if you don't want that hassle, I would, if you want ultimate performance, get an 8000 kit. But even then, it's not a huge advantage, and that's what I'm kind of seeing. You're not going to get a 10% performance improvement from memory on an AM5. You're at max going to get 5%. And even if you've got a 9700X, that's the kind of numbers you should expect. You can watch my last video to see what it does for a non-X3D CPU, but you're talking small numbers. Now, if the RAM kits are very similarly priced, then sure, go for it. I mean, why not? You can always take an 8000 kit and drop it to 6000. You're not going to be able to push a 6000 kit to 8000. Well, if you've got a 6000 CL26 kit, that would probably do DDR5 8000. But anyway, that's kind of what I would recommend at this point. But I'll give full recommendations in the upcoming video, which I'm very glad to be wrapping up, because like I said, it's a lot of testing. Problem with taking so long to test is that things change, and then you got to try and make sure that games didn't update in that time frame, and you can do that on Steam, and it's a pain in the butt. You got to make sure that Windows doesn't update. You don't want to update your graphics drivers, of course. So especially when you're getting numbers that are this small, like 1.8%, it's not really meaningful in the grand scheme of things, but I'm trying to keep as much of my testing apparatus as constant as possible. Same CPU, same motherboard, same RAM if I'm varying things as much as possible. So anyway, it should be interesting. Okay, I wanted to move on to the next topic, which was stock versus tuned. Which one is right? Now, this is a conversation that happens on channels like Hardware Unboxed, where they try to justify why they only test at stock. The problem is they don't. They test at stock, but they turn XMP or Expo on. When you turn XMP or Expo on, you're overclocking. So they're fundamentally not telling you the truth when they tell you, well, I shouldn't say that. They're misleading you a little when they tell you that they're testing at stock, because they are overclocking the RAM. Now, they typically will tell you that that's what they've done. So that's why it's not a lie, right? But it's not the argument around testing at stock conditions versus overclock. To me, is ridiculous. We are tech channels. We are supposed to have some expertise in tech. Why wouldn't you show both? If you just want to operate at stock, my hat's off to you. But as I showed in my last video on the Nvidia GPU overclocking and undervolting, you can operate that and get better performance than stock with lower temps. Why wouldn't you do that? There's no reason why you wouldn't do that. It's so easy to do. Why wouldn't you do that? You're extending the life. That's typically the argument. Oh, people that really don't know what they're doing, they'll come out and say, we're testing at stock conditions because what 99% of the people will do. Yes, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you only show people to test data that's tested at stock, and then you mislead them by claiming that you don't want to not test at stock because you'll get big problems, you'll crash your system, you'll destroy your chip. You do all these fear mongering, of course people will only operate at stock conditions. My argument is, show them the performance at overclocked, undervolted, optimized conditions as well as stock, and show them how to do it and let them decide. Otherwise, just test consoles. That's what a console is. Stock conditions, right? I mean, the value and beauty of PC building is the fact that you can do this, right? This is for the 9950 X3D that I tested by running at complete stock. This is no RAM overclocking or anything. My score in Cinebench was 2147, and after tuning and optimizing at 2505, that's a 16.7% increase in performance. That is meaningful. That is significant. And it does not take long to do this. I do it through PBO2. If you've seen my guides, I step you through it. It's very easy to do, and particularly for AM5 boards. Most motherboards will allow you to do this. On Intel, typically to get the most out of your system, particularly for Core Ultra systems, you need higher speed RAM and you need a good quality motherboard, typically a 2DIMM motherboard. Not for AMD systems. There is no reason why you shouldn't show it. Well, there is a reason why you wouldn't show this. If you don't know what you're doing and you're basically living a lie and peddling that you're an expert when you're not. That's the fundamental thing that's going on here. There are people, particularly on some large channels, that really don't know what they're doing, and they're getting discovered for it. This is an example from my 9070 XT versus 5070 Ti testing, and I show both. I show default clocks, here's your performance, and I showed max overclock. The increase in performance in 1% lows in Call of Duty Black Ops 6, I know a lot of people play that, is 22.3% for the 5070 Ti, and 1% lows really does impact gameplay. And for the 9070 XT, 16.5%. These are significant numbers. And I show people how to do it. I don't just say, hey, I'm a genius, I can overclock this thing. No, it's not rocket science, it's Lego. I show you what you can accomplish, and then I show you how to do it. Why doesn't every channel do that, right? Like it's insane to me why you wouldn't do that, right? I mean, okay, if you want to make money from it, put it behind a firewall, but at least show you can do it. And that's the problem that I think we're facing here, is that I think just testing at default clocks is treating your audience like they're dumb. I really do think that's what it is. And then you push that narrative. I had a problem with one of the channels. I forget which one it was, but he went on a rant midway through his video claiming that I wouldn't overclock, I wouldn't undervolt. The guy doesn't test anything. He just takes from Hardware Unbox and shows data. It's like, do not give advice if you've never done it, right? Like, that is not your job. It's crazy. And it was just fear mongering. That's what people do when you're fearful yourself. When you don't know what you're doing, you try to spread fear. And what you try to do is create a community of people that share your fears. I think it's a fundamental thing that humans in general do. And it's not cool. I don't like it. So anyway, moving on, and this is related, moving on to the big channels are watching. Here's an example of big channels are watching. I mentioned Jay, I responded to he responded to my shout out to him that, hey, you owe Microsoft an apology. It's not fun to give an apology to big companies like Microsoft. It creates more drama to beat them up and say, I'm standing with you, power to the people, come on, man. If you're calling them out for something they didn't do, apologize. But anyway, so here we go. Hardware Unbox, one of my favorite channels, right? I'm smiling, of course. Steve saying, still a flop, right? So he's talking about, is Zen 5 worth it for gaming? Now remember, in one of my videos, the 9700X versus 7800X 3D, I took him to town. I showed his data and showed how the way he tests is wrong. His results are incredibly misleading. And I went through it in detail. So if you want to see that, go to the 9700X video, my original one. So what does he do? First of all, he doesn't test 9700X versus 7700X. He tests 9600X versus 7600X. And I'm smiling because I'm pretty sure he did that so that I couldn't directly compare my data to his. But in the video, he literally tried to step through and address a whole bunch of the issues that I talked about in the video. Now, he doesn't give a shout out, and why would he? He's a very insecure individual. But he tries to step through, because I called him out for saying that Windows created 30% increase in performance. That was BS. And he tries to claim in the video that he was right. He was wrong. Many things he did, I do not like what he did in the video, but I just want to show you what happens when you don't know what you're doing. Here is one of his charts. This is for Cyberpunk 2077. Now, by the way, I had criticized him for testing CPUs at 1080p ultra settings, because I claimed and I showed that when you load ultra settings, you are offloading the CPU to the GPU. It doesn't matter whether someone plays at that or not. That's a whole different discussion. When you're looking at comparing the relative performance of CPUs, you need to load the CPU as much as possible, right? Imagine going to a car dealership and the car dealer said, hey, here's a really nice, I don't know, BMW. Do you want to take it for a spin? And you're like, nah, I'm not going to take it for a spin. I'm going to go drive this boat on the water, and I'll make my decision that way. That's what happens when you load a GPU and try to claim a recommendation on a CPU. Doesn't make sense. And I've talked about this many times. What he has done, which I appreciate, is that he's added 1080p medium. Now, I criticize him for not using 1080p low settings. Why the hell go to 1080p medium? Just go to 1080p low. There is no meaningful reason why he went to 1080p medium and not go to 1080p low, other than having to admit he was wrong. Anyway, so stepping back from that, it's a step in the right direction. Good on you, Steve, right? You've got a huge channel and you're starting to test better. I mean, just look at these results. Testing at Ultra, he got virtually no performance difference between the 9800X 3D and the 7600X. Then testing at medium, oh my God, how did that happen? The 9800X 3D is suddenly performing better because you're loading it. It's amazing what happens when you test CPUs and you're not loading them. You're just showing the performance of the GPU. Anyway, so he's testing at 1080p medium. Put that aside for a moment. So I do not agree with that. He should be testing at low. But he gets this difference in performance. And he shows here that remarkably, the 7600X is performing better than the 9600X. Now, he doesn't anywhere in the video talk about the fact that the TDP for the 7600X is essentially double that for the 9600X. Doesn't talk about that. Very bad configuration choice from AMD, but this is in the mentality of you can only test at stock conditions. Oh, well, it's the exception of putting Expo on, because they know how to do that. Steve knows how to turn Expo on, so that's why he tested it. So, okay, so 7600X is faster than 9600X. Now, that should be the same margin if you look at my latest CPU video as the 7700X to the 9700X. Lo and behold, I tested it. If you look at Cyberpunk 2077, the 9700X performs much better than the 7700X across the board in multiple games. The average being 13% improvement. In fact, in Cyberpunk 2077, the average increase in performance was 8%. Now, again, this is at what you should be doing, 1080p low settings, so it's heavily loaded. But just look at that difference. This is insane. This is misleading. He's telling people that the 7600X performs better than the 9600X. That is fundamentally incorrect. And this is why testing at stock conditions does not make sense, right? Testing only at stock conditions does not make sense. I'm fine if he showed this and said, and he tested properly at 1080p low, there's no reason to test at 1080p Ultra. Just test at 4K Ultra if that's the case. If you really want to see what people are going to be buying high-end CPUs for, whatever. Anyway, I'll leave that rant for another time since I've done a bunch this live stream. So if he was to test at 1080p low, and he was to test them properly and configure the chips properly and show, all right, here's 1080p low, here's baseline or default, and here's optimized, just using some PBO tweaks, he would get a very different conclusion and he would guide his audience better. So I wanted to show you that because this is just incredibly misleading. And it's based on a premise that's just fundamentally not right. So I wanted to show you this. Did someone come in? I'm just seeing something. I heard my door open, so I'm just making it sure that. Oh, so this is my daughter that wanted to say hello. So say hi to everyone. Oh, this side. This side. There you go. Say hi. Wave. All right. I'm still in the middle of it, so I'll come play in a minute. All right.
Okay. Bye.
See you later. Bye. So, all right. So that's where we're at. I'm gonna wrap up soon since I got the 10-minute warning from my daughter, I guess. But I'll take a look at some questions in a minute, right? But I did want to share something with you. So I'm very proud of my wife. She wrote the Cryptocurrency Investing for Dummies book. She's written about, I don't know, 7 or 8 books. It's amazing. And so she's focused on financial education. She's an entrepreneur, so she was kind of helping me with Blackbird PC Tech as well. So she's done some really cool things. But the reason I wanted to share this with you is not because I want to push crypto, but she came out with a new book. It's coming out soon. It was actually last week. This book isn't out yet. It's out in a couple of months. If you want to learn how to build your finances the right way with low risk, this concept she's come up with called Triple Compounding for Dummies, it'll be released soon. That's an approach that you can take. So if you want to be able to afford a 5090 and a I don't know, whatever, a really high-end motherboard and other things, being smart with your money is really important. And so these books are great introductions into how you can do that. I mean, to give her credit, I wanted to sell all of the Bitcoin that we had when it was tanking 2 years ago. And because I thought it was, a scam and wouldn't amount to anything. Thank God she didn't let me do that. And now it's rising, and like people are claiming that, some serious investors like JP Morgan and others claiming it's going to be worth $1 million a coin or $1 billion a coin in the future. So pretty interesting stuff. But that's, by the way, no, this is not financial advice from me. I am not a financial person. I am a tech person. I'll give you tech advice, but I just wanted to point this out because I'm very proud of my wife. You can look at this on Amazon. Last week she was #1 in the category was financial education or something like that with the book, and so she's doing a launch in a couple of months. So really proud of her. Just wanted to point this out. For Dummies guides are always good. I think I'll do a For Dummies guide since she has the contacts here for PC Tech in the future, which I think would be really cool. Yeah, really proud of her. Just wanted to give a shout out to this audience, and if you're interested, support. If not, no big deal. Just wanted to point that out so you can pre-order on Amazon. So let me and by the way, when you're an author, I don't know if you know this, but you make virtually no money on books, right? It's more about the marketing and the getting your name out there, the credibility building, that type of thing. The book deals that you get, like it's crazy. Like you'll get like a check in the mail for 3 cents or something. It's crazy. Although the cryptocurrency book did pretty well for her. So anyway, let's see. Tony, yeah, how to benchmark for dummies. You could do a whole series on this, right? Yeah, and I could send a copy to Steve. You know what's fascinating about Hardware Unbox is that I'm originally from Melbourne, Australia, and that's where they're based. And I'm going to be heading back there next year just to catch up with family and bring my daughter there. She's never been. And I would love to get together and chat with them, but the chances of that happening are probably pretty slim, given that I've pointed this out a few times now, right? Dummies guy for Lego. I love building Lego. And I took my daughter to Legoland in upstate New York over her school holidays, so that was fun. Let's see, Tony, would enabling DLSS at 1080p on low settings load the CPU more? Absolutely. So you can look, in fact, loading DLSS upscaling, all it does is that you're rendering at a lower resolution. So it does load the CPU more. So that's why it's still relevant at 4K. If you're playing a game like Cyberpunk and you're typically using standard settings that use upscaling with 4K, and this isn't frame gen, this is just upscaling, you'll be rendering, if you're using performance mode, you'll be rendering at 1080p. So that's why your CPU is still relevant today, even at 4K in some games. Now, if you're just using rasterization or not upscaling or using rasterization or ray tracing will load your CPU a little bit too. But if you're just doing that at 4K native, then yes, okay, it's going to be GPU bound, heavily GPU bound, which is why I have a problem with Hub testing when it's GPU bound. It's clearly GPU bound. The other thing Hub does that I don't like is that they'll test unique segments of a game. So Steve would push back on me and say that the reason that his performance in Cyberpunk is so different than mine is not just because he tested it stock, but because he didn't test the benchmark, right? It's a gameplay benchmark. So it better represents how the game plays. That is garbage, right? So what he's saying is that the developers of the game don't know the game as well as he does. They created the built-in benchmark, but they don't know the game as well as he does. What the advantage of doing it this way, and why I would always caution you when someone does it this way, is that they can claim that their results are never wrong. Well, okay, but I tested a different part of the game. If you tested that game, so there's been examples of people reaching out to Steve to say, could you let us know what parts of the game you tested? He just doesn't respond because he doesn't want people checking or verifying or validating his work. All of my benchmarks, if you have the same components, you can verify and validate my work. Like that, why not do that, right? And it's okay to make mistakes, but to create a situation where you can't be verified, like I think it loses credibility. Let's see. Let's see. Yeah, Clipty, well said about stock versus tune. There are a few places to go because everyone is scared and just can't go AMD and Intel is scary. Yeah, I mean, so one of the reasons I created the channel is to get rid of this fear mongering, right? That overclocking and undervolting are scary. Now, look, I know there's people out there that will convince you that because they're trying to upsell you on doing a one-on-one consultation, right? I don't do that. I'm not doing one-on-one consultations. I've got a Skool community, so I would love to push you there. If you want to support the channel, please join my Skool community. But I'm not going to upsell you and charge you $500 to do a one-on-one consult when I can show you on YouTube for free how to do it. Now, there's people that even if you show them, they're not going to want to follow it and they're going to be scared. I got it. But this narrative that you shouldn't tune or tweak your PC, that's what PCs are all about, in my opinion, right? If you don't want to tweak anything and you just want a game, get a console. And then the argument is, well, but you know, I want a game at a higher performance level than a console. Then learn how to tune and optimize, right? Why not? You don't have to, right? Like by the way, if you operate your system at stock, that's fine, not a problem. What I would say is that if you're doing it because of fear, if there's reasons you're doing it, okay. If you're doing it because of fear, I'm telling you, it's not difficult. It really is Lego, right? Trust me, look at my guides. You don't have to trust me. Look at my guides, step through and see if it's easy. Because I guarantee you, it's much easier than you think. AMD's PBO made overclocking and undervolting CPUs, AMD CPUs, very easy. Intel is still very easy, but it's not quite as intuitive, I would say, as PBO. I wish they would release something similar. Now, they do have a software tool, XTU in Windows, that is very easy and basically does it for you. But it's not difficult, right? Let's see, what time are we at? 1:14. I think I can do another few minutes here. Let's see. I saw some. So yeah, hi Rev. It is kind of like buying a car with different parts and then just letting them sit on the shelf. Imagine buying tuned parts for your car and then just having them sit on the shelf. I mean, it's okay, you can do that, and the parts themselves will remain in pristine condition, but you won't actually get to benefit from them at all. So that's a good analogy. So Will asks, what does increased PBO limits entail, motherboard limit or manual? So Will, I highly recommend you go to my channel and look at the AM5, AMD AM5 guide. I'll put it in the details for this video, and that'll walk you through. Basically, I use motherboard, and the reason I use motherboard is that then you can tap into the quality of your motherboard, right? But I also put some limits on, right? You can limit depending on your cooling solution, it's usually a good idea to put a limit on temperature as well, right? So that if you have a kind of an average cooling solution, then if your motherboard allows you to kind of go to any power, then the thermal throttle limit will kick in, right? If your CPU tries to overheat. So that's a good balance, right? But yeah, check out the guide. So Lester said, got my first PC in 93 and immediately started tuning it. Can't help it. My PC's run stock for 10 to 15 minutes and I start tweaking. Yeah, I mean, there's just, if you do it properly and you follow the right guides, there's not a lot of downside. And this thing about, oh, I'm reducing the life of my component, undervolting increases your life. And so my argument is undervolt and then use the headroom to increase performance. And then you haven't affected your life, basically. But there's no real data that you can point to say, hey, it increases it by this much. But decreasing the power and decreasing the temps increases your life. So that's what I'm saying. There's no real argument for it when you start to break it down. Let's see. Brian said, in your tuning guide, you use a high-tier motherboard like ROG or MEG, which has better components for tuning. Can I do it on lower-tier motherboard like Asus Prime or MSI Mag or ASRock Steel Legend? So, Brian, if you're talking about AMD motherboards, then yes, you can. Most AMD AM5 motherboards allow overclocking and tuning. You might not be able to get DDR5 8000 to run stable, depending on the quality of your motherboard, but DDR5 6000 with all of the tuning options that I show in the videos, absolutely. For Intel, it's a little different. You will, as you go to higher memory speeds, you will struggle to get those stable using lower quality components. And when you switch to a 2DIMM motherboard, you'll typically be able to go higher. That has gotten way better over time. And so now 4DIMM motherboards will enable you to do that too, right? So, and you see one of my members from Skool just got 9,000 stable on a 4DIMM motherboard for a 285K. So that's super impressive. Hey, John, thanks for joining, becoming a member. Appreciate it. Let's see. Thanks for joining, Steve. Have a great day. Yeah, Will. So that's, by the way, Will said I have excellent cooling push-pull 360 AIO. So one of the things I'm going to do in my course is talk about push-pull systems. It's pretty interesting when you look at the data for them. Interesting in the sense that it's typically not a huge advantage, but there is some advantage. You also have to make sure that the fans are at the same speed and that they're the same fans. Otherwise, you're going to have an issue, right? Because you're going to have a buildup of pressure, and so that's something that comes with it too. I appreciate that, DeZeus. Yeah, she's way more impressive than I am, dude. Like, yeah, you gotta check out her channel, right? She's bigger on Instagram, which I don't use. She does have a channel on YouTube. She has a bigger channel than me. I think she has 50,000 subscribers on YouTube. But my channel is growing faster. I just want to throw that out there. But she has like 300,000 followers on Instagram, that type of thing. So she has a very big presence online. Will, when you said $500 consult, I felt that. Amazing how many creators gatekeep things you can learn in a day behind a paid Discord server. Yeah, and so Will, I understand why they're doing that, but my goal with the Skool community is to generate revenue to support the channel. But I also want to create like a community where we're not like attacking each other, and then we're supportive, and you don't get banned for like saying one thing is better than the other. Like I don't want to deal with the drama. So I want to teach, and I want to be able to have good conversations and talk about tech, and it's fun. Like we had the live stream this week, and we basically just chatted. I mean, we just chatted. A bunch of the members asked some questions, but we just chatted. It was fun. It's kind of cool to find people around the world that have similar interests that you can just chat to. But yeah, one of the things with my Skool community that I wanted to do was I wanted to create an environment where we could do tech support and could do troubleshooting, where I didn't do one-on-ones and charge a fortune, that everyone could benefit from. That was the idea. And I'm going to keep doing that on the channel. I'm still going to keep answering questions on the channel. I'm still going to keep engaging. I think that's something that people like, and I'm still going to do that. And I'm still going to be delivering high quality content on the channel, right? So the memory video is a good example, right? I'm not putting that behind a firewall. That is going to be on the channel, right? I know some channels will launch a video for a week on behind a firewall and then launch it on YouTube. I'm not planning to do that. All right. And this will be the last question I answered today. Appreciate you, man. Appreciate you, Will. Tony, is there a burn-in time frame for thermal compound? That's a really good question. I swapped to a Lian Li V100 last night. Today, I've noticed my temp's about 5 to 10 degrees Celsius lower. So yes, there is. And different thermal compounds will have different time frames. You need to cycle it, heat cycle it like multiple times to really get it to be where you're going to see it on average from that point on. You will also, with thermal paste, you could get to the point where it dries up and it needs to be repasted. On my test benches, that's why I use cryo sheets. Some of these, because I can switch out CPUs much easier, much faster without mess. They may be a couple of degrees warmer than optimum thermal paste, but I haven't noticed that. So there's multiple solutions. If you're building a rig and you're going to leave it there for a year or whatever, then I would use thermal interface material and get a good paste. There's a bunch of channels now that are testing. I think Igor's lab has a very big database on thermal interface material, which one's best. Seems that it doesn't. There's some interesting results. Seems that it doesn't really matter. I mean, that's kind of the takeaway from that. But for sure, it does. Typically with thermal paste, it takes multiple heat cycles to get it at its optimum thermal conductivity, right? So yeah. I appreciate that, Tony. Okay. Yeah, and I love Thermal Grizzly stuff just in general. That's why I would like to have a partnership with him. So I'll reach out to him again, and hopefully I can catch him at CES. So I'm going to try and set that up, because that would be super cool, because I do respect that guy. He has a very good knowledge and background, and doesn't really peddle in rumors and misinformation. So I appreciate that. So listen, I appreciate you all for joining today, spending some of your Saturday with me. I'll always have a lot of fun with these, and I can talk for another 2 hours. But I got my 10-minute warning from my daughter that it was time to go and play. So I do have to wrap it up. If you're looking for ways to support the channel, you can either become a member or join the Skool community. We'd love to have you there. No pressure. If you just like watching the content, do that too. And I have to say, we're approaching 25,000 subscribers. So we've had remarkable growth. I truly appreciate everyone that supports the channel, from watching content to likes to sharing to joining. It makes a huge difference. And I really think that we're building an amazing community that's supportive and, isn't super aggressive and tries to cut people down when they have a different opinion. Like I love that. I love that freedom of opinion and being able to share that online and doing that in a safe way. So I appreciate you for supporting the channel. It's been an amazing ride so far, and got lots of cool things planned for the future. And then, you keep me honest as well. So when I'm seeing some things from other channels, I think about the community that I'm serving and how the best way to communicate that to you is. and without getting pulled into the drama. So that's my goal. But I really appreciate you. Thank you for joining today, and have an